It's Way Up with Angela Yee. I'm Angela Yee, and Jasmine from the Jasmine brand is here.
Yes.
And we have two great guests with us. We got the iconic Fab Five Freddie is here with us.
Happy to be here. Nice to see you.
And Dr. Brandon McNeil, I'm going to call you iconic as well.
She's in the Icon Club for what
Yes.
she pulls
Two
off.
icons.
She's the Deputy Director of Digital Literacy, Workforce Readiness, Adult Education, ESOL, and Cultural Programs. That's for the New York Public Library.
That's right.
That's a lot of titles.
Yes.
Yes.
Tell me about it.
She got a lot of
She's
work.
like, a lot of work to do. And y'all know I don't play about my New York Public Library.
Oh, man.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually always talk about the importance of the New York Public. It's not just for going and reading books. There's so many other services that are offered.
So many other services. I was just telling Fab, we actually have 4 studios now within our library, so people can come in, you can record music, you can do podcasts, make beats. We've got all types of resources for everything. So
That's dope.
That's
Some of
so
the
smart. I love it.
some of the kids there actually interviewed me for their podcast for the
Very
so
cool.
I came by for that. And Fab Five Freddie at the Schomburg, you actually have your items all immortalized there. So talk about
well,
that.
the Schomburg acquired my stuff, a big archive of things that I've kept over the years that I never even thought of it as any specific value. It's just, when you move from place to place, you get rid of stuff you don't want, and then you say, this is what I'm keeping. And those were a lot of magazines, The Source and this and things, notebooks, and then a lot of digital media, a lot of VHS tapes and a lot of audio cassette tapes of Yo MTV Raps and all this stuff that I just, it was my stuff that I always envisioned. I'm going to hire some college kids to transfer this stuff so I could be able to access it. And then there was a guy that dealt in dealing archives and would place archives from different people in hip hop. And I was curious. I thought you needed to have hundreds of flyers and all kind of paper ephemera, but when he came and saw what I had, he was like, oh my God.
Amazing.
And he started talking to the Schomburg, so they acquired it. So it's a great honor. A lot of stuff had went to Cornell University that this archival broker had placed. And I thought, well, yeah, maybe Cornell, but it's right in my neighborhood of Harlem.
Oh,
How
beautiful.
exciting is that?
They've been digitizing a lot of it, and the pandemic slowed that down. So soon they'll be finished, and there'll be exhibits, and lots of stuff will be on display at points going forward, which is where this image comes from.
Wild style.
On the
Wild
library
style.
card, which was stuff in my archive, and they had this great idea.
Yeah, it was a great idea. So we knew that in partnering with Queens, Brooklyn Public Libraries, we wanted to make sure that we represented hip hop. And so when we were thinking about it, we said, we need a library card, but we want a limited edition. What do we want to do? And we knew what we had in our collection, and we wanted the icon in it. So that's how we ended up doing the Wild Style. There it is.
Yeah,
the Wild
yeah.
Style library
That's
card.
dope.
Yeah, listen, and y'all sent me like 4 of them, so it was a fight up here.
Yes.
Oh,
But
boy.
people can go online and get it, right? You
They
can
can-
go and digitally sign up for it and then pick it up.
Sign it. We've already 13,000 have already been issued.
Out of 50?
13,000, yes.
Out of 50,000. I was told it was
Yes,
50.
50,000.
And we say
13,000
limited means
already.
limited.
So what happens
Yeah.
after the 50?
That's it.
It's
collect
over?
this item.
It's-
Okay.
And they are collector's items.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, you can still use them to do everything at the library, but they are definitely a collector. I mean, it's the best library card around. Look
Yeah.
at it.
That's kind of dope.
Yeah,
It
no,
is
it's
dope.
very, and
Yeah.
it's the 50th anniversary of hip hop. You guys have been doing a lot.
So
Fab Five
much.
Freddie, you've been doing so much. It's never stopped for you.
It's been a blessing. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of work to be done, and I've been doing the work.
Yeah, so I
in
want
the
to,
groove.
let's just, because you were the first ever host of Yo MTV Raps.
Yes, I was. Yeah.
And so you said some of those will be digitized so how was that? What's working with that?
So what it is in the beginning of Yo MTV Raps, cable was still a kind of a new thing. Yo
I ain't
MTV
have it.
Raps
Yeah.
went on the air
Same.
in the
Not till
fall
later.
of '88. So a lot of Manhattan was wired, but I'm from Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, and Bed-Stuy wasn't fully wired yet. So I used to have to I had it in my contract, I'd get a couple of VHS tapes, one I'd keep, and one would go to my parents in Brooklyn so they could see what I'm doing. Like, look, I'm like,
I'm on
really,
TV.
I'm on TV. And so that just became, every week I'd get these tapes from recording the show, and it became like a whole lot of tapes. We did the show for about 7 years or so through that critical golden era of hip hop. So there's going to be a lot of great content.
Oh, I cannot wait.
Yeah.
I want to flash back to that.
Yeah, they're going to digitize, and then they're going to have it available so people can come in and see shows and interviews with a whole array of people. The only stuff that I get to access are things that people have posted on YouTube. So, occasionally every few months there'll be something different that'll pop up, and I'll be like, oh man, I forgot this show, and I haven't seen this in a while. So,
I mean, listen, you have some of the most iconic interviews, and at the time that you're doing things, you don't even know in the future what that will turn out to be. You did Tupac's first ever interview.
Yeah,
I was looking at that too.
Yeah, the first time I interviewed Pac, actually, it was interesting. It was a clever idea we came up with, I'd like to say. He was filming the movie Juice, so they were in New York shooting, and we decided, let's interview him on the set. I did a cameo in the movie Juice as well. I'm actually playing myself, like I'm covering that big DJ battle going on. And then I interviewed Tupac, and then we wait to air that when the film drops. So we now have, here's a look at Tupac on the set, and here's the thing, and you'll go and see him in the film. But I interviewed Pac several times, and a lot of the pivotal people that define the kind of greatest era of hip hop made their television debut, national television debut, on Yo MTV Raps. So a lot of special memories.
Out of all the times that you interviewed Tupac, do you have any memorable moments?
Man, it was a lot. Tupac was always interesting. So another time later, before he got with Death Row, he was in the studio in LA recording. He did an incredible freestyle off the top, myself, and he's mentioning everybody in the studio. That was Coolio, MC Breed. Then he ends up with a rhyme about me and Yo MTV Raps. But later in that episode, we're outside of the studio, and I knew about his background. So I don't think this had ever been made public, that his mother was a part of the Black Panther Party and was caught up in a famous trial, which was the New York Panther 21. So it was the first time he'd ever talked about that, because it was Tupac before he really blows up. And he breaks it down very succinctly and clearly where he comes from and how he was about that life, aware of the struggles that the Black Panthers have been fighting. And they were made to look so evil and bad. But the main thing that the Black Panthers did was feed kids a breakfast before school in the morning.
Let's not forget that.
And they whipped it into a frenzy. But Tupac was really brilliant, and he had great answers. He was sharp and on point, and very interesting guy.
Yeah, I mean, to think about it, right, back then, to get on Yo MTV Raps was, you made it. Because that was not an easy process. How did you guys even choose early on who was going to be on the show?
Well, basically, I mean, a big part of what made Yo MTV Raps so special is they let us do our thing. And the two great producers, rest in peace, Peter Doherty and Ted Demme, two cool dudes that loved hip hop, and they understood that I had made some moves already. I was deeply embedded in the culture, having been a part of making hip hop's first feature film, Wild Style.
Yes.
So they said, man, hey Fab, and if there was a question with a certain group, they would ask me, I'd listen, I'd say, oh yeah, this is no question, this is the bomb. But sometimes they would slide me things and I was like, But essentially,
Man, listen.
But essentially what our idea was to find a concept that we could extend what the group was doing, like show the audience where they're from or give the audience an insight that's an extension. Because it was kind of one of the first times, especially for us as people of color, to not just hear the music, but to see where we're from, different hoods. And it was a great thrill to travel to South Central to interview NWA for the first time and take you on a ride on a flatbed truck through the hood and show you Compton and show you the swap meet and do the same thing in different hoods around the country.
Now, Dr. Brandon McNeil and Jasmine, I'm going to ask both of y'all, do you remember the first hip-hop song you ever heard?
Ooh, I think the first one that I remember really knowing was gonna be Salt and Pepper's Push It. That one for me was like, okay, I've got that down pat.
Okay.
What about you, Jasmine?
LL Cool J, I Need Love.
Really?
Yeah.
That feels later. I know.
I mean, that's my truth.
Yeah.
That's my hip hop truth.
When you said Salt and Pepper, you know what's crazy? When I was young, I remember they had, when they were like Sandy Doe, and they did a diss song, right, to the UTFO crew. Do you remember that? and that was way early on because Push It was a little later, and Tramp. I remember
Tramp. I remember Tramp. Yeah.
What you call me?
Tramp, and I remember the video, and they had tramps right across the guys' faces.
Yeah.
You know, I remember Supersonic.
Oh, JJ Fad.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Oh, that was big. Yeah.
Yeah.
Supersonic.
DMC was
Supersonic.
another big one for me. Adidas was.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
The thing is, some of those songs are such hits that it's hard to remember
Yeah.
when you really
Heard
heard them. 'Cause I
Right.
feel like they're continuing.
Because I remember certain things. Of course, we know Sugar Hill Gang was super.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you something about that Supersonic record.
Mm-hmm.
Ice Cube wrote that entire album.
He
Really?
did?
Yes. 'Cause
Ice Cube?
Ice Cube.
That's hilarious. I
Which
had no
I
idea.
did the same thing, and it was Jerry Heller, the head of Ruthless Records, told
Uh-huh.
me that, and I was like, "Wait, I did like a double take and
Supersonic.
had to ask him like twice." But that's the skills of a writer.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I can,
I can write for
I
women.
was just watching that video the other day.
Supersonic?
Yes. Because that video was, and then when she was rapping real fast,
So
that was it.
I guess Ice Cube wrote that too.
Yes, he put it all together for them, which was pretty incredible
That's
to think
dope.
about that at that time.
So for you, Fab Five Freddie, since you go way back in this, right?
Yeah.
Do you even remember the first time you were like, this is a real thing? Because I know when hip hop first started, after disco, everybody was like, this is a fad. This is not going anywhere. This is not going to be something that's going to be sustainable. And people didn't take it seriously.
That's true. They didn't. And being that I had made some significant moves early on, like around hip hop's first film, Wild Style, when I would do early press, they would all ask, how long do I think it's going to last? This is a fad, a
50
trend.
years at least.
And
Okay.
a lot of people felt that. I definitely didn't. I could not have imagined hip hop would be around for so long and so dominant. But in thinking about that, I realized how deep those roots went, and the basic foundation got a time to really embed itself. Those roots, I mean, so that it stands on something really strong. When you think of the foundation of a building, you got to build a strong foundation, and I think that's the amazing thing and how this went to countries all around the world. And Your MTV Raps, once again, had a lot to actually do with that, because a lot of people didn't realize the show was broadcast on MTV channels around the world. So there's people to this day that saw the show in different parts of Europe or even in Africa. Like the VHS tapes would get copied and passed around.
That's funny.
Got to.
Which still blows my mind to this day.
I remember I was watching recently also David Bowie. Remember that MTV interview where
Man, that interview he did. There's a couple of David Bowie, and I was a big David Bowie fan, by the way. But that literally seeing the interview when he's talking to one of the MTV VJs and asking him why they don't play black music, and he didn't, and the MTV guy didn't have a good answer
at all.
And
Yeah.
It was awful.
David Bowie
It
drilled
was.
in, and
Yeah.
you could feel how awkward he felt because it was really no good reason.
Right.
And that was just a few years before Yo MTV Raps happened. So that indirectly
okay.
influenced, like, we need to make a move, which was a very radical move because way ahead of BET, MTV put a rap show on the air, and the ratings instantly became the highest ratings on the channel.
Yeah, just look. If you look back, if you haven't seen that, you guys should watch it. But looking back at that and seeing David Bowie, so I'm confused as to why you don't play any black artists.
Yeah.
And the guy was like, well, we want to market to a wide group of people. He was like, but don't you think that black people are included in, in
Way
that?
before his time in terms
So
of
you know
saying
what it
that
was
publicly.
too? Just like, MTV was trying to mimic what radio was doing at that time. And so radio in America, in some cases still is, but it was very segregated at the time. So if you were a black artist, no matter what kind of music you made, you were considered
Urban.
dance or urban or soul
Yeah.
or funk or one of those other categories, never pop.
Right.
Pop kind of only meant white. And so they mimicked that in terms of only playing what was on pop charts, pop radio.
And there's a lot of rock, too, I feel like. They played a lot of rock music.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A lot of rock, a lot of stuff out of England. And it was Michael Jackson's label that pressured them. They said, man, if you don't play this Billie Jean and whatever, we're going to pull all the other acts, which included Bruce Springsteen
Oh, wow.
and a bunch of other acts. We're going to pull them off of the label and make it a real glaring fact.
Because how do you not do Thriller? Remember when Thriller came out?
Yeah.
That was
Yes.
a literal movie.
Yeah.
It really was. And it changed the whole nature of video making, and MTV blew up. The ratings went through the roof again and again and again. So that all played a significant part in breaking those walls down. making change.
How did you have the business acumen to do certain things that you did at such a young age and early on? Because you were an artist. You started off as a graffiti artist, part of a crew. Graffiti was definitely frowned upon.
It was.
Right? Because artists would tag in up places they couldn't get caught, you know, because it definitely was sometimes people's personal property. And it was
or property of the city.
It wasn't considered art.
It wasn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't. And I'll be honest, all of it wasn't art. But in the beginning,
you can't just
it
have
was
a tag name and think.
Yeah, I mean, I usually describe it as a kind of a rebel teenage energy in the beginning. I'm just writing my name anywhere I think it needs to go. And keep in mind, it was a Greek kid from the Washington Heights, Taki 183, who set it off. And then other kids around the city I want to put my name up. But it developed, as thousands of kids did it, a form of creativity, a way to use the paint and color and form developed.
Right.
And so...
And also tag places that people are like, how did they get there?
And that's what I was always thinking when I would be like, where's the craziest place you've ever tagged?
Oh, God, Well, I can't remember the craziest place, but those kind of tags were known as perms. For permanent. So there's a certain place you can put your name. You knew, oh, that's a perm, because nobody could ever get to it to clean it or wipe it off. But I just want to say, like, in terms of, it wasn't so much business acumen. I was interested in controlling the cultural narrative and creating another narrative around who we were. So young Black and Latins in the press were almost always depicted negatively. And I wanted to show that we were doing other things. So the idea of what became Wild Style was an idea I had. Let's show us as artists, the music, connected all together. We all coming from these same neighborhoods in the city, and let's present it as an art movement. And that led me to connect with people on the downtown, underground, punk rock, new wave scene in New York. That's how I connected with Blondie. And who
Rapture.
heard what I had to say, ran into another young brother from Brooklyn like me, Jean-Michel Basquiat.
Yeah.
We became super tight. We're both trying to make similar moves in a similar way. And people from that new wave punk rock scene were open to what we were doing. So that became the foundation of how we put the movie Wild Style together. I got with Charlie Ahern, who was an underground filmmaker who loved the idea. So that was, and then we got all the best people from these different areas of creativity, the people making the music, the Rocksteady crew that you know.
Shout out to Crazy Legs.
Shout out to Legs and the rest of the crew. And that became hip-hop's first film, which the New York Public Library brilliantly has the Wild Style logo, which was a graffiti wall painted in Riverside Park by Zephyr, Revolt, and Sharp, three well-known New York graffiti artists created this image. And now it's it's amazing. So that's a little bit of the story.
Now for you, Dr. Brandy McNeil, how exciting is it for you to be working alongside Fab Five Freddie and immortalizing all of his archival documents and works of art?
It's been amazing. So we have been celebrating 50 years of hip hop since February, and we've been doing everything, and it has been so interesting. So we were talking about tagging. We had Olga Correa at our wrap-up. We just did a big wrap-up event this Saturday, which Fab was there. Charlie Ahern was there. We had Daytwan from Vibe there. And Grandmaster Flash came through. We really wanted to be able to celebrate the start of it. And so we did 4 different types of panels where we had fashion, and we talked about music, and we talked about film, and we talked about dance, because we really want people to understand the history of hip hop and what it's done to really contribute to our culture.
Right.
And so
you guys also have like the 50 books, I think.
Yeah, we have a 50 book recommendation list.
Oh.
So that means you can go to nypl.org/hip-hop. And you can find everything we're doing. I mean, this weekend we've got some events coming up at the Schomburg. We're doing a film festival, hip hop film festival. So you can come, you can enjoy that at the Library for Performing Arts and at Lincoln Center. We've got a dance battle coming up. I want to get out there and do a little something, Angela.
I'm not winning no dance.
Angela ain't dancing. She ain't dancing. She'll bop though.
I'll do a little bop, but we can't win like that.
I just have to jump in and just add big up to the New York Public Library. I mean, she was just explaining to me that the different boroughs do their different things, but a big up to what they've done in Brooklyn, representing.
Where you're from, let's be clear.
No question.
Okay.
All day, baby. Do or die, best style. But the way they've acknowledged Jay-Z with that tribute at the main branch of the Brooklyn Public Library, which is pretty cool, in sync with Hip Hop 50, and then what they're doing here with the Wild Style card. It's really dope that a library is reaching out. Imagine young kids that are thinking about these things and getting these books and seeing these images and how that's going to help shape them. Pretty cool.
What did you think you were going to do in your life, like before all this happened and you became a host?
Wow.
Because that's not something you could have ever envisioned for yourself. What did your parents think you were going to be? Like, what did you think?
That's a very good question. So I was kind of... School didn't, I was always a smart kid, but I didn't do well in school. So the disciplinary aspects of school didn't work well for me. But I was always in books and in the library. And a part of how I became an artist, I was just sharing with her, was I don't recommend cutting school, but I would do a fair share of cutting school. But I would go to different museums and libraries in the city just on an exploratory tip. I'd get my little bus subway pass and go to the main branch of the New York Public Library, the Schwartzman Building. I'd go to the Metropolitan Museum. So I got very comfortable with...
Self-taught.
Yeah,
right.
Essentially. And so the idea of making art, being an artist, it all became something big in my mind. And then I began to figure out, well, how could I make moves and get myself into this space, which was not anything typical for a young black kid, barely 2021, to figure out how to get into the art world. But making the moves that I made, connecting with people on the downtown scene, punk rock, new wave, Blondie, people that were doing things in culture, like heard my ideas and they said, we like what this is, we like the way this sounds, come on and let's make it happen. So.
Okay. And you've also been very innovative in the space of cannabis. And
yes.
And I want to make sure that we talk about that too, because cannabis and hip hop is so closely intertwined as well. And it is also something that used to be frowned upon, but now politicians are involved. Everybody's trying to figure out, the most conservative people, how they can make money and profit off of something that has really been detrimental to our community and that really has caused people to really go to jail, be separated from their families. And now it's like, okay, how are we going to get involved?
So what I did was, you're right, and cannabis has been a part of my life a long time. My dad was a cannabis aficionado. He was close to the jazz scene, so it was in the house as a kid. I knew it was a no-no to talk about that because it had this heavy, like, you can go to jail, basically.
Right.
So a few years ago, I had the idea to make a film. I'm a filmmaker as well as a visual artist, so I made a film called Grass is Greener. You can see it on Netflix right now, and it's about the history of cannabis. But I also got into the cannabis's connection to America's music. So from the beginnings of jazz, people like Louis Armstrong, Fats Waller, the greats that built jazz, were all cannabis aficionados. And it turns out every cutting edge form of music, cannabis was a big part of it, up to hip hop. And people like Snoop and Cypress Hill and Method Man and Redman, most of these people debuted on my show and they became cannabis's biggest advocates. I made this film to show those connections, show the history, and then also look at the criminal justice nightmare of people of color being disproportionately criminalized for a plant that, by the way, has killed no one, but it's listed on the federal criminalization chart equal to heroin. So that's being unraveled. People are learning that it's plant medicine, it's beneficial. Some of the things that people get prescribed opioids for, cannabis is proven to aid those people. So that led me to start a cannabis brand called Be Noble, in the name of the brother that I feature in my films, a black man from Louisiana that was given a 13-year sentence for 2 joints. His name is Bernard Noble. We named the brand after him. I partnered with Curaleaf, the biggest cannabis company, and so we're in 9 states and a lot more to come. We take care of Bernard Noble, and we also donate 10% of what we earn to organizations helping fix the harm caused to people disproportionately criminalized for cannabis.
See, I love that because I feel like so many people are are trying to get in this business, but those are the same people that used to be so against it. Right. And so I like to see people
so true.
that I want to support, right, who have brands that are doing good for our community and that have been advocates from the beginning.
Yes.
And so I think that's important that people understand what the brands are, who represents those brands as well.
Totally true. And it's also fascinating to be in New York. And when you see Grass is Greener, if you have, and I focus on a lot of the cannabis laws and what has happened and people had victimizing disproportionately people of color, disproportionately arrested, criminalized, et cetera, here in New York. Now, New York has the most progressive cannabis legislation in the country, and a lot of progressive folks trying to do the right thing. So the first people getting licenses in New York City are those that have been victimized by cannabis laws and have been in the system for selling a little weed or possessing. Those are the first ones. So we're trying to aggressively fix the problems that have been caused and once again, disproportionately affected folks of color, and the potential business-wise is humongous.
All marijuana is not created equal either. I have
You sure about
definitely
this, right?
smoked with a couple of people that I'm like, woo.
Yeah.
That KK, okay, Wiz Khalifa's brand. Have you ever had an incident where you smoked and you had no idea who you were or what was going on?
No, I've never been that high, but sometimes with edibles and stuff, you have to be careful because the edibles can be strong. And some of the craziest cannabis stories have been relating to people eating one too many edible, gummy, cookie.
Same.
And then when it comes down, like, it is wild.
Yeah.
But once again, I like to emphasize, no one has died from use of this incredible plant, even with the overdose on edibles. So, watch out for them edibles. But
yes, for sure.
Hey, take it all, be very cautious in how much you take, because it doesn't hit you right away.
Yes.
Some people will be like, I don't feel it yet. Take another one.
And then it hits you and it's over.
I know, it's crazy, but it's really just great learning about the different cannabinoids, the various elements in the plant. Because of the heavy restrictions on cannabis, we've barely scratched the surface on all the other potential elements. Like we know about CBD, which can be extracted and grown to have no mental effects, just to affect
like the THC.
Right. All the THC has been down to nothing, and then the effects of CBD, which can help people, even seniors that have aches and pains. CBD is proven to be helpful, but there's a lot more that once it's hopefully federally legalized or that it's allowed to be studied more thoroughly, we can get more of the benefits out of this special plant. It's really plant power.
And more Fab Five Freddie things, because if he doesn't have enough going on from everything you've heard just now, as far as being a filmmaker, being an artist, being a host, being all the things that you do, right? Can we see at the Schomburg some of the artwork that you have? So,
well, that's a good. Well, you got good questions, Angela. When it's time to have an exhibit, I'll gladly lend them. There were no physical works of art as a part of the things that the Schomburg did acquire, but to give a full view of creatively what I do, I'll definitely lend work so that if they've got photos and other things, I'll show them some of my paintings.
Dabbled in the NFT space too, right?
I'm aware of NFTs. I've owned crypto since 2014.
Oh, before it was cool.
But when the NFT thing popped off during the pandemic, I knew it was going into a hype cycle. So I wanted to slow down a bit, let those people that have been making digital art, that have been dabbling in that, get their thing off. And now that NFTs are becoming a lot more normalized, I'll definitely ease in at some point, because this is transformational stuff going on in different aspects of tech. So I'm definitely going to have my foot in those waters as well.
I feel like Dr. Brandy can help with that. That's
because this is some of the stuff that we've been doing at the library. Just so you know, like we've had NFT talks because we wanted to make sure that people in our communities had the opportunity to understand what it is. How do you get involved with it? Yes. We've done digital art classes to help people to learn how to do it.
Oh my goodness!
So we've been dabbling in that, and we also have a business center. So people who are trying to get their businesses started and whatever it might be.
Yes.
Can definitely come to our businesses, and we help you do all of that.
I'm so happy to hear all the
Yeah, like-
all the next level things in New York Public
Well,
Library.
I tell you,
is
they
doing.
have that. So for the
Very cool.
young adults, the Stavros Niarchos
Foundation Library.
that Foundation Library, they have a whole floor that's, first of all, it says there's a sign that's like, if you are over this age, you're not allowed down here. So it's for the
Good.
young kids.
Yeah.
But it has a podcast studio. It helps you with video editing. They have classes to teach these kids how to do these things, which I think is amazing, and it's free.
So cool.
Yes.
Are you
Everything we do is free.
Are you actively creating art now?
Yeah, yes,
Okay.
I make art now. The recent series of paintings that I showed at a big street art exhibit in London deal with the subject of black pirates, which during the time of the 17th century, when the slave trade is booming and European empires are becoming super wealthy off the backs of slave labor, sugarcane production in the Caribbean islands, it was all moving around on ships. And
Right.
many pirates did not like the idea of the monarchy, and some also were against slavery. So when they would capture ships, a third of pirates in that period during the Pirates of the Caribbean were of African descent. Movies would never tell us that because you wouldn't know. So I made a series of paintings that look at those, and I'm also developing this as a theatrical project. So
he doesn't stop.
So
Yeah.
if you go on my Instagram, which I don't post a lot, but I look at everything that's going on Instagram. I've got a little clip of some of these paintings, and the title of this body of work was Black Pirates Return, because I want to tell that story. So I show you what some black pirates look like. There's not a lot of history, but just like certain things that we did in times of history were not thoroughly documented or recorded. But once we know that this happened, we can let our imaginations paint the pictures in. And so that's what I'm doing with my work, and I'm going to develop this as a theatrical project, which is in the works now, and I'm talking to some folks that are very excited about it. But it's just, so that's something that I'm really excited about in terms of my subject matter for making art, and that's just part of what I got to do. I mean, I got to keep on making it.
Isn't it amazing to have lived your life doing the things that you care about and you're passionate about?
Oh yeah, it's been a blessing. It's
That
been
is.
truly a blessing, and the way you phrased it, just to do the things that I love and I care about, and to be able to pay the bills, it's been special.
Like truly like a cultural icon for us. And I do really appreciate you for coming through. Dr. Brandy McNeil, I don't know if you guys, let people know again, where can they find out
Yes,
information?
talk
How
about
can they
the
get this Wild
library.
Style limited edition library card?
You
Yes.
can go to nypl.org/hip-hop.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great.
Yeah,
And
thanks
Fat
so
Five
much.
Freddie, I mean, can you post some more on Instagram, please? We need you to.
I will post a little bit more.
You
Just
got
for you,
so
Angela.
many great things that people need to see. I just think, that is going to be.
We need more.
Yeah, we need more.
I'm bringing it to you. I'm also in early stages of working on my memoir. I've got a collaborator I'm going to work with, and so I've got a lot I want to lay it out in detail. It might even need to be a 2-volume memoir.
I
'cause
can't even imagine.
I got some stories to tell. Trust me.
And I'm
Trust
sure
me.
there's some stories that you have never let fly
Shared, yeah.
that we'll be able to read
Yes.
in these
No, I
memoirs.
wanna lay it
because
all out
You
and
are
connect
around
the dots.
everything and every different genre, maybe not country, but
No. But,
He said no.
No. But part of my thing is I grew up in like a jazz household. So my dad and Max Roach,
Yep.
the drummer, were childhood friends. And so a bunch of smart guys that were connected to cutting edge culture, they'd be at my house as a kid growing up. And as I've grown up and become an adult, I realized how much of that rubbed off on me, especially some of the things that they wanted to do but weren't able to do at that time. Like
Right.
Max Roach and them, those guys wanted to run their own labels. They wanted to be able to control that narrative. In that time, the 40s, the 50s,
That wasn't happening.
It wasn't happening. So a lot of that, I think, affected the moves I made and what I do and how I do it.
and even parents who were supportive of your creativity because of how they were surrounded with people and how creative they were too.
Exactly. So
Some people would have been like, I don't know what you're doing. Get that music out of here.
That's a very good point, Angela. And they were very open-minded to the things I was doing. And then Max Roach was as well. He wanted to come and see, what are you doing? And I was like, he wanted to hear about hip-hop and listen to it. And Miles Davis, who Max was very close with, was very curious about hip hop as well and new music. You know, he left classic jazz and then went into jazz rock and did a whole new thing back then in the early 70s. And he was watching hip hop closely. And the last album Miles Davis made, released posthumously a little after his death, was a hip hop jazz collaboration called Doo-Bop, produced by Easy Mo B.
We love that.
Right?
And listen, and I just want to ask you one last thing.
Sure.
How important, since we're talking about history here, do you think it is now for these artists, these younger artists, to know their history? Because some of them feel like, you know, we're doing our own thing, it's evolved, and leave us alone and just support what the next generation is doing. But sometimes you feel like, look, at least know what came before you. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's exactly right. Artists should know, and it's so easy. I was one of those kids that spent a lot of time at the library. So back in that era, if you wanted to learn about what happened in previous eras, you went to books. Some libraries had records that you could take out, put the headphones on, and listen to. This era of kids, all of this information, everything that happened is just a few clicks away. So you could click around and click in, and Google, Wikipedia will take you right to a lot of basic overviews of a lot of this stuff that happened. And it's important to understand that so that you can know where we've been, so you could, when that road, that fork in the road comes up in your life, in your young life, you can see which way to go and how to navigate. GPS is even a few clicks away.
Yeah,
you know?
that right.
There's so many tools. There's really no excuse, you know, to not be on your game and understand some of this history. And it's a lot of fun, too.
Yeah, some of my favorite artists are the ones that have, you can tell that they have kind of been inspired by just some of the older artists and the artists that came before them.
Absolutely. That's really important. Use these tools to advance yourself.
That's why it's so important at the library about the banned books, right? To make sure that people can get access to the history.
Great point. There's some crazy people in different parts of the country that literally are trying to ban books, ban education.
Can people from Florida get a New York Public Library card?
No.
No.
They can't come here and go to the library?
They can.
Okay.
Yeah, they can definitely come here and do it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Can they come here, get some access? We got you guys.
Yep.
Okay, got
so
you, Florida.
Angela Yee, Jasmine Brand in the building.
See, he's so good at this.
He is. I mean, he's a pro,
He's our
so
host,
yeah.
Well, thank you, Fab Five Freddie. We
Thank
really do
you.
appreciate you, Dr. Brandy McNeil. Always appreciate you too. Thank you.
Appreciate it.